Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lightworkers podcast. This is our third episode, and we are here with Ronda today. She's a light worker. She's been healing for the last 15 years or more than that. And today we get to know more about her work, what she's been doing, how she got into spirituality. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. So, Rhonda, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you got interested in spirituality?
Okay, so I was born in Edmonton, Canada. I spent my childhood in Edmonton, and then when I was 20, I moved out, and then I worked around Alberta a little bit. Yeah, I've always been intuitive and whatnot. And so I moved back to Edmonton like a year ago, right? So I've been living, last time I lived in Drayton Valley, right? So Drayton Valley is an hour west of Edmonton, and then it's half an hour south, right? So it's about an hour and a half southwest of Edmonton, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I was always been intuitive growing up. I always had lots of family and friends and pets around me all the time. And I mean, I was always feeling like I was um, connecting with everybody on a very energetic level, kind of a thing. And then growing up, it was so I have my grandparents are Oma and Opa, and so when I was 30-ish, my grandma died. And so it's funny how because working in the so growing up I was going to church all the time, right? And so my parents are very religious, right? My mom was a little more religious, my dad not so much, but it was all good. And so we'd go to church and whatnot. And so I always had like um, this the religious aspect of my world was going to church, and there's God, and going to church, and it's all great. And then when I was about 16, 14, I just started to
Mm-hmm.
realize like I don't really need religion to tell me what to do. Like I already have what's going on in my heart and my soul. And I was just like, I just didn't feel comfortable at all at church anymore, right? And so I think I was
Mm.
16 when I finally just said to my mom and dad, like, I want to help you out with, the church stuff that they were doing, but I just don't want to go to church on a regular basis, right? And that kind of worked better for me because I just felt like I could kind of be more myself, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so I mean, that was my teens. And then again, when I was 21, moved out. And then it was like I was very intuitive all the time, and I got all my messages come in threes all the time. So whenever I get the same dream or the same thought three times in a row, and I get this um desire to like really act on it, that's like, well, that was my sign, right? And I still have that all the time. I'm like, it's always been my three, right?
Wow.
But yeah, so and then yeah, so back in 1986, I not 86, 1996, I got married, and so he's my ex-husband now. He didn't quite believe in all the energy stuff, and he didn't believe anything. And so that was really weird. I just like, how do you not understand energy? And, how do you not believe in it? But if I told him I had a dream, he would believe me, right? Because he always had dreams, right?
Right.
So dreams was his way of getting intuition, right? And then, yeah, so when I was early 20s, I was watching Montel Williams, and Sylvia Brown came on, and she's a psychic, and I loved her to death. And she would always have participants come up on the show, and she'd be like, I have a pain in my neck, and I have a pain in my back. And she's like, well, who's the pain in your neck in life? And who's the pain in your back in this life, right? And so that would always make her have the connection between them. It's like, oh, what you're thinking, and that's how it's manifesting into your body, right? And so I was just like, oh
Mm.
my God, like there's got to be a book that talks about this. It can't just be her saying it. There's got to be a book out there somewhere. And it took me like 30 years to find this book. So I literally found it. It was called The Secret Language of Your Body. and it was by Anna
Mm.
Segal. And it's literally like my Bible on my table. It's like I go to it whenever I have any questions. When my clients send me up, I have issues, blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, well, this is what this book says, right? You can work with this, right?
Right.
And then I would usually like take a picture of it, and I'd send them the picture with my sessions, right, that we would do. And it was really cool because there's always something in the paragraph that you would actually totally relate to, or maybe the whole paragraph, right? It was really interesting how it's done. But yeah, so I mean, I searched forever for that, and I could never find it. And then I finally did find it. So flashback like 15 years ago, like me and my ex-husband divorced. And as soon as we divorced, it was like my intuition just exploded. It was like, that's just crazy, like what's going on. Like, but I mean, and I trusted it and I believed in it, right? And so that's just kind of how everything kind of started. And then so starting like in 2013, my best friend was working at a hotel, and
Mm-hmm.
they had the HR brought in a tarot reader, right? And I'm like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Like she's like, we had 15-minute sessions and they told us all kinds of cool things. And I'm like, oh, like I want to do tarot readings, right? So
Right.
I always had psychic readings and I always had tarot readings before. And I was like, yeah, like I definitely want to do this, right? And so I did tarot cards for about 2 years, and then in the summer of 2015, I literally had 2 energy sessions,
Mm.
and one was SRT. And so after I left my SRT, I was just like fascinated with the pendulum, right? So this is what a pendulum
Mm.
looks like, just
Mm-hmm.
on a chain, right? And it's a weight, right? And then I was like flashing back to when I was 11 years old at my birthdays. So one of the girls in my class, she had her 11th birthday party, and her 18-year-old older sister came down, and she's like, "Oh, I'll tell you what it's like tell you what the sex of your babies will be like." And we're just like, "Oh my goodness, like, what do we do this, right?" And it was like bang on. It was actually bang on, right? And so, of course, then going back to my SRT session, um, she was like, oh my God, like pendulum, like I need to do pendulum, right? So I was doing pendulum. Of course, the pendulum, you can only ask one question at a time, right?
Mm.
And then I'd be like, okay, well, I need to get to this faster because I can't handle asking and answering, 20 questions just to get to one answer, right? So I created all my own charts, right? And so I have a book about this thick of single papers. And I've created over 100 charts. And then so that was really cool. And I get to my answers much quicker, right? And then yeah, so working on that.
So, Rhonda, what's the difference between a tarot reading and maybe a pendulum reading for a yes or no?
Oh, so a tarot reading would come through the cards, right? So you have some that are positive, some are negative, right? Cards,
Right.
and they would kind of guide you into, well, this might happen, this may not happen, right? This is a yes, this is a definite no, right? And then with the pendulum, it has, so this is a yes, and I program it to be this way, and then this is a no, right? And so back in the old days, um, pendulum users would go counterclockwise or clockwise again,
Mm.
right? So it can be anything you want it to be, but you just have to program what you want that motion, what would that represent, right? And so when you're working with charts, it's much easier to do yes and no or back and forth for no's, right? Does that make sense?
And you created these charts on your own? Like it's a
Yes.
download?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's created, and then so how it works is you believe that your soul, your high self, um, connects to your high self, which is a group of light beings. And everybody has a high self. And then you only might need one person to work with one special questions, or you might need a whole bunch of people that come together as a group and give you the general consensus of whatever the answer would be, right? So
Mm.
it's really cool how you have a huge team of people who are out there, right? So there's spirit, God, universal energy, whatever you want to believe in, like the higher being would be what you would call, right? And I call that
Mm-hmm.
spirit and SRT and halo. And then we have like our high self, we have our angels that come into play, and then we have all of our life ones that have deceased, right? And they also come in and they also help us, give us our answers and stuff like that. And so that's how, so with the pendulum, almost anybody can be answering the question as long as they're light beings and it's somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's, a little bit more evolved than you are, right? So yeah. Um,
And
so
then,
yes.
oh, and then, have you specifically worked with certain angels, and how has your experience been with working with angels? And like for people who don't know what are
Right.
angels.
Yeah. So I bought a book. It was on angels and it was the archangels, right? And so I worked with them specifically, like Archangel Michael was really good at protecting you. Metatron is really good at organizing your thoughts and getting you to the highest potential outcome. Raphael is really good at connecting your words, right?
All
And
right.
then there's also Archangel Raphael that I would use to, cut your cords, right? So cords are just invisible attention or cords that we have between you and another person. Doesn't cut the love that you might have for them, but it cuts the energy
Mm-hmm.
attachments, right? Which are the cords, right? So yeah, so you
Oh.
can
Mm-hmm.
lots of different angels. You can buy a book and you can read up on them all you want, right? Those are the main ones that I usually use, right? And I don't use them as often as I used to use them. And I find like, when we're going through frustrations or strife and everything going on in our life that might be frustrating us, I find we tend to call on our angels or spirit or God or whatever, right? It's kind of like when everything's
Mm-hmm.
going great, everything's great, and you don't need to do that. But of course, then you're like trouble comes up, and then you need to talk to them, right? So yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And so then, Rhonda, what role does or how important is faith for you in your life? I mean, especially since you've come from a religious to like a spiritual world, and so how did you maneuver that
Right.
change?
Right. Yeah. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I just you gotta kind of have someone that you believe in that is higher than you, right? Which is, for me, it's just spirit. And then it's like, yeah, and it's just like when times are tough, I need to just dig into the spiritual side and like, pray and offer my. So, I mean, when we have something going on, like it's just you need to ask for help because if you don't ask for help, they can't help you, right? It's our free will locks us in helping with spirit and God and everything else that you believe in, right? So yeah, so every once in a
Mm-hmm.
while you just gotta, relinquish all that control that you have, and then relinquish all that, and then ask for help, right? So yeah.
So, Rana, what is the role of overall spirituality in, I mean, according to you, in a person's life? Is it specific to when times are troubled, or, is it something that is a consistent force in our lives?
So yeah, so the constant usually comes from just your unwavering feeling of believing that something's going to happen for a reason, right? And maybe it's not happening right now, but it's going to maybe happen in the future, right? And so you just got to have that faith
Mm-hmm.
and trust that it's going to happen, and there's always divine timing, which is connected to everything going on, right? So the divine
Mm-hmm.
timing may not be right now, but it might be, 6 months or a year from now or 6 years from now. But yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
you just gotta really you gotta find how deep your faith actually is, and you need to like hang on to that and call
Mm-hmm.
on that when you have times that are causing you trouble, right? So
So, have you experienced divine timing in your life, and how did you work with it or believe in it when, things didn't work out the way you wanted, or at least if you wanted something instantly, or you had a timeline in place and, it didn't happen at that time. So, how did you, work with that?
right. So I find divine timing is very it's kind of picky because we on Earth we're so eager to have it happen all the time, and we want it right now because we're in a time where we're immediate satisfaction and gratification, right? We expect it to happen all the time, right? And so COVID was a perfect example of like everything just kind of shut down. And for me, COVID just taught me how to, go with the flow and relax and not be so pressured, like not pressuring myself as to, get my business going. And, it was COVID, right? So, yeah, so we just kind of had to, you just have to kind of have faith that it's actually going to happen when the right timing is actually going to happen. I mean, there's times where,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to always happen, and it's like, it's not happening. Why not? Like, what lesson was there that I maybe needed to learn? So yeah, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of interesting how, looking back on my life, it's like the divine timing of like my divorce and marriage and when my babies all came through. And I mean, that's all divine timing. And it's pretty much stuff your soul put into your soul records, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
subjected to the divine timing of it all, right? Like up in the spiritual world, we can see it all plan out. It's kind of like our movie script. We get to see, oh, okay, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and so that's all great. But here on Earth, we forget all that. We don't know what we've planned, right? So it's kind of a surprise. So again,
Yeah.
trust in the divine timing of it all and divine timing of what I've planned for myself, right? Not just spirit, but me personally. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's really interesting how, when you need to hunker down and actually have patience, and patience is being patient with not having complaining, right? So we usually complain all the time. It's like that's not patience, that's just complaining, right? So yeah, so having patience
Right.
is like a hard thing for people to deal with and get through that, right? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm patient with everybody in my world, but not with
Mm.
myself, right? That's just how I am,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
And then, Rhonda, you've been working with clients for such a long time. So, do they also understand the process of, trusting the process or like seeing results in time, like you mentioned, divine timing? So, how does it change when you're working with people, or or it stays the same the way, you
Yeah. I
take
mean,
yourself?
I find it's more about educating them to know, like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
want this to happen. I want this to happen. It's like, well, if it's not happening, there's a reason why it's not happening. And it's because the timing isn't right. So sometimes they're harder because you can't get through to them very good. You need to
Mm-hmm.
find an example that they'll give you, and then you can explain to them, well, has it happened yet? Well, yes, it has. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen when I wanted it to, but it did finally actually happen, right? It's like, well, that's divine
Mm-hmm.
timing, right? So sometimes it's just about getting them on the same page as you. And usually once you get them to make that connection, that usually they're like, oh, okay, kind of, I'll get it now, right? So
Right.
yeah.
And then, Rana, as a healer yourself, do you have a process that you follow in terms of maybe protection or, the daily rituals or anything of that sort? So basically, overall, Rhonda, as a practitioner, do you have a whole structure that you follow maybe on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I do. So in Halo, we want to prep to work. So I want to set my bubble of protection around me, and then I want to prep to work. And then Halo has 3 steps. It has a prep to work, and then you work in the charts and you solve all the issues that are coming up, and you want to clear all that stuff. And there are programs that are going on in your subconscious mind. And then we call it a cleanup crew. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that's in my charts, and then everything in the spiritual realm, that's all cleared up in the cleanup crew. So it's like having a party and you don't want to clean up afterwards, so you call up the cleanup crew, right? So the cleanup crew
Right.
does everything. So yeah, it does all spiritual stuff and all the other things. Because I mean, if we wanted to do a session on someone to clear everything, it would probably take us 8 hours a day for 5 days out of the week, right? It'd probably take about 40 hours of work just to clear
Mm-hmm.
one person. That's like, well, that's what the cleanup is for, right? You clean up crew and call them in and have them do that, right? And then your session's kind of done, right? And then of course that's when I would always check with my clients, do you have any other questions? And then go over stuff, because you might have release symptoms that come up. So if you clear
Mm-hmm.
a lot of anger, you might have anger. You might be angry in a couple days, right? I find it's usually 2 to 4 days is when the energy releases from your body, but it could be any time. It could be 2 years from now. It could be 2 hours from now. And then
Mm-hmm.
so I just kind of go over all those things that can affect them. And
Mm-hmm.
then do you have any questions, right? And that's basically what we would end it with, right? So yeah.
So, Randa, you said sometimes just clearing a person of a particular issue can take so long. So now that you have your energy team, does that expedite the process?
Yeah, it does. So I'm finding like yeah, so it pretty much condenses everything that we need to do into probably 60 minutes to 90 minutes for an actual session done, right? And then if they've had multiple
Wow.
sessions with me, it doesn't take so long for them. Like usually we do
Mm.
it in a set of time, and then a lot of it they just call me up like, I just have issues with this and this, and they give me a list of things, and then I do cleanup crew at the beginning, and then I clear the other individual things item. I do them individually, and then yeah, and so it just condenses everything. So yeah, it's really good.
And then what kind of issues do people come with when they approach you, or how do they get to know about, you? How have you generally been getting clients? Do they just find
Yes.
you online? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they find me online, on Facebook, social media, stuff like that, and then yeah, so I find out, do they have any concerns? Because sometimes they don't have any, they don't want to tell you what they are. And so
Mm.
it's like, okay, we'll just do a general clearing, right? And it's interesting because it's very psychic, but it doesn't come off as
Mm-hmm.
being psychic until it hits you, and they're like, ooh, okay, I know what that and that was all about, right? And so it's kind of cool. Sometimes it's great to work on their issues, but other times it's good not to have them, because that surprises them completely and makes them a little bit more sold on the process, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just depends. I find they so they're really good with stress, PTSD, mental illness, um, psychic wounds, which are spiritual wounds, which can cause all kinds of issues in your body. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, yeah, like it's crazy how they'll have a session and all of a sudden they're like, oh, my allergies just disappeared. It's like, well, yeah, because they clear up your allergies, because it's a program, the protection program that we had, right? And then it's just
Mm.
like, yeah, it's crazy how their ideas and that what they have coming through, right? I feel calm, I feel balanced, like all those things that they weren't feeling in their life just slowly comes all into one little piece of energy, right? Like everything's just finally balanced a little bit, right? So it's kind of like having your computer is getting really slow down, so you need to get a cleanup on your crew or clean up on your computer. And so that's kind of how you walk away from it, just kind of feeling relieved, right? And kind of refreshed,
Mm.
right? It's kind of getting like or tune up on your car, right? You finally, things are acting up, so you take it in, you get a service, you get other things checked out, and like your car is amazing. It's like brand new all over again, right? So it's like it's a tune up for yourself, right? So yeah, it's really cool.
Right. And have you had any experiences with energy leeches then in that sense? Because if you've had like, people come with psychic attacks and other sorts of issues, how do you protect yourself or how do you work with a client that comes with such an energy?
Right. So I usually, for myself, it's my energy that I protect myself. And then I will sometimes include them in my protections. Sometimes I'll create a protection for them. Because and then after the session, I'll always cut my cords after, right? Because of course,
Mm-hmm.
a leech is like, here's your battery and it's fully charged, and then here's a low battery and they suck it from you, so you always give them your energy, right? So we definitely want to cut those cords when we're done. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm finding with leeches, they're kind of in denial because they don't really realize what they're doing, right? But sometimes you just have to, cut to the chase and tell them exactly what's going on, and then sometimes you have to kind of
Mm.
beat around the little bush, right? So it just depends, right? So yeah, so I had one lady a long time ago. And it was just like she just felt like she had all this negative energy around her all the time. And we cleared
Mm-hmm.
everything, and the spirit said, no, there's nothing attached to you, there's nothing going on. I'm just like, okay, so it's just in your mind. So if you're thinking about it all the time, and you're so thought, you're creating the energy that's going through you and around you. You're actually attracting it to you, which is like the law of attraction. Anything you think of, you're manifesting, right? So you need to try and switch your energies to positive energies, and hopefully that will maybe, might help you, right? And if it doesn't, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just their soul, right? So some people are meant to be um, learning and growing all the time, and then other souls are meant to stay in the zone where they're going to stay closed off to all the new ideas, right? And often we will actually pick people in our lives to create that scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's our choice to learn how to grow from that and leave them behind. Like, they're not going to follow
Mm-hmm.
with us. They're going to stay over at this right location, right? And sometimes the soul is not meant to progress like we are, and they're meant to
Mm-hmm.
stay like the horrible thorn in someone else's side. And they're meant to be that person that everybody's in their life, right? Like they're just a negative energy person, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
great to clear them and get them cleared. And then, I mean, if they come back to you, they come back to you. And then sometimes you just have to send more stronger boundaries with the next time you do a session with them, right? And I've had to do that in the
Mm-hmm.
past, right? It's like I can't do
Right.
you in person because I need to do you by phone. And then actually then it turned to, well, I can't do you by phone, I have to do you by distance. You're going to get the exact same
Mm.
information cleared, but your energy is interfering with my pendulum, and it's interfering with um my concentration, because if I can't keep a clear channel, then
Mm-hmm.
interference comes in, and then it blows holes in your little channel that you have going on. So yeah,
Mm.
so it's kind of funny. Like I've literally had a lady, and I just had to tell her, like, I can only do you by distance now, right? And like, okay, that's
Mm.
great. And then I'll maybe send you an email, like summary of whatever came
Mm.
up, right? So you just gotta
Right.
figure out, like, am I needing a boundary right now? And if I am, then put that boundary in, and don't be afraid to put in your boundary. You're gonna probably have to put
Mm-hmm.
them in lots of times in your lifetime, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And so then, can everyone be helped, Rhonda, whoever approaches you? Like we just said, there are so many things that you've had to alter over the years working with different types of clients. So then, do you work with anybody and can everyone be helped? Whoever approaches.
Yeah, like I think under the surface, everybody can be helped. What's on the surface is usually their attitude toward it, right? I've had people, it's
Mm.
like, I had this session and I didn't feel nothing. It's like, well, are you feeling stressed? Are you having any issues going on? Are you having any, your allergies? Oh yeah, I don't have allergies anymore. Well, that was from the session, right? So sometimes they just
Right.
in denial, and they don't want to believe that it actually did any work. But I mean, it works for everybody on some level, right? If that
Mm-hmm.
makes it, right? It makes it a little more
Right.
sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And some people, you just got to say, well, I don't think this is helping you anymore. So maybe try Reiki, maybe try another practitioner, maybe try something else totally different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
I actually have a little checklist that I do at the beginning of a session, and I go through all these things, like what other things from my Halo session will actually help you, right? So there's Reiki, and there's other things. There's a, natural path. So you might want to go to a naturopath, have a session with a naturopath person, right? So all those things are in there, right? And that just
Mm-hmm.
gives them
Yeah.
another idea of what else you might need to try, and might not be nothing else that needs to show up, right? So, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's spirit and my high self telling me all this stuff is based on this other client that I'm working on, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
And have you had difficult clients or difficult situations where people do not see a change or they feel like, they don't want to do the work and they feel like they're stuck or they really are, suffering or addicted to suffering? So how do you deal
Yeah,
with that?
I think the ones that are super addictive to the suffering and to all that stuff is like they're kind of in a mindset of where they're not, they want, they desperately want to be helped, but they're blocking their own help, right? So it's a way of their
Mm.
soul not ready, maybe not feeling worthy of getting healing, not feeling ready to do the work. And a lot of times they're just so stuck in their mentality where they're, um, everything seems overwhelming. So
Mm,
when I do something little, it's overwhelming, right? So I
mm,
mean, in those situations, it's just some of those clients, I just can't help them. Like, I'm just telling you what's going on. I'm educating you, but if you can't accept that, or yeah, like sometimes you just like I did my work, and then
mm-hmm.
usually those are the people that don't come back to me, right? Those are usually the ones that I do a clearing and they don't see any results, right? Because of course they want the quick fix. They want, it's a band-aid, and it's not a band-aid. I'm just clearing energy, right?
Right, right. And then do you have you seen people who come to you for a particular issue, but then, after clearing, after healing, or they actually realize that it was another issue that came up and that got resolved? Like they came for one reason, but something else became the focus of their life.
Afterwards, you mean?
Yeah, like how sometimes people come with maybe a heartbreak, but then you clear something around the relationship, but their health improves, so something of that sort. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few people that have come to me for something like that. And it was usually, their ex-boyfriend or ex-wife, or, and it was like, you just got to kind of walk them through the process and how the process goes with, you and your soul planned all this in advance.
Mm.
And so you planned it to have this relationship with this person, and you had it, and it's 100%
Yeah.
complete. And now it's time to
Mm.
clear it, right? There's nothing in your future with him. Like, you don't need to keep going back, right? And so yeah, it's all about educating them again, right? And then it's kind of like the
Mm.
aha moment. They either get the, oh, okay. So like my
Right.
ex-husband and I in my SRT session and my training, I had doing research on the lives, and I'm just like, oh, it was me hurting him, me hurting him, me hurting him. And then I was like literally laughing to myself in our class. It's like, I whole get their whole relationship of our divorce and the relationship before that. And I get that it's just a balance of the karma, right? From past life
Right.
to current life, right? And then I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, what percent is this done? Oh, it's 100% done. Like, okay, this is awesome, right? So again, if you can
Right.
make that connection and show them an example with me personally, what happened, it usually
Mm-hmm.
helps them get that aha moment that they have, right? And helps them get through like their difficult time that they maybe are going through, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Rhonda, is there a particular philosophy or a particular book that you read and that you really follow in terms of, your own spiritual anchoring in your life?
I think mine's just kind of a combination of a whole bunch of things, right? Like, I believe like everything happens for a reason. I believe my soul planned my life, and spirit just gave me the check mark. Yep, go ahead and do this, right? If it was something going on that'd be way too difficult for do, spirit would be like, you need to go back and revise the timing of this, because you can't have your
Mm-hmm.
parents die, your pet dies, you lose your job, you move, like you can't have all that stuff going on. You need to spread
Mm.
that out a little bit more. So I believe that everything happens for a reason. Because I have a say in what my soul plan is, I can't be a victim. I can't ever be a victim. And so yeah, so those are the things that just kind of focus on what's going on. It's like, oh, I had a reason for this. I don't know what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a soul somewhere, a plan that I needed to plan something that I need to learn from it. And maybe I won't learn it
Mm.
today, but maybe I'll figure out what it is in 2 months, or maybe 2 weeks, or maybe 2 years. Like, it's gonna finally make sense to me for something, right? And so that's usually what I
Right.
need to focus on all the time, right? So
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So then now just talking about Rhonda as a person. So what motivates you apart from your healing work, in your life generally? Is there anything else that, you're passionate about or that pursue?
right. Um, well, my family, I mean, I care about them deeply. I have 4 pets. I have a beagle and 3 cats. Love them to death. So yeah, my inspiration and my passion always comes from I'm wanting to learn more about the spiritual side of things, right? And if I don't understand it, I literally ask a whole bunch of questions, and I've asked Spirit at least like literally over 100,000 other questions, right? But it was always about just over the last, few years, with a pendulum, and it helps me understand everything that's going on in my life. Like, you know, can I change this? Yes, but not right now. Okay, so now I gotta wait, right? Okay, great, got that, right? So all these questions that I asked all the self, asked Spirit, just gives me more clarity, helps me understand the spiritual world and here in the physical world, what I'm experiencing now. And then it's just kind of like, okay, well, this is going to happen in the future. It doesn't happen right now. It's not happening immediately, right? And then again, I need the patience to go through it all. And then, so yeah, so it's just kind of like, yeah, so I don't know. It's just something inside me, right? And I can't always explain it very well, but I mean, it's just like, you just need to find the one thing that wants to get you to move forward all the time, right? Not get stuck in this in the past or in the present is not like, yeah, you don't want to get stuck in the past. You just want to be moving forward, even if it's just a little bit and you don't feel like you are, like you just need to move forward, right? So that's what I usually work on, right?
Yeah. And then, Rhonda, our last section is about, miracles and giving hope to people. So, do you want to share some stories of your clients where you've really seen a lot of transformation or, things just turned around 360 degrees and, for the better? So,
Right.
do you have any stories?
Yeah, actually, I had in my first 6 months of SRT,
Mm-hmm.
I had a lady come to me and she believes in all this stuff. She does Reiki and she was a grandma, and her daughter was about to be turning 8, and she had can't say it, uh leukemia,
Leukemia?
leukemia,
Yeah.
can't
Mm-hmm.
the cancer, right?
Blood cancer.
Yeah, and so she's like, I need your help. And she's like, it won't be for me, it's for my daughter. It's like, okay, great. Let's just clear up your daughter, right? So her her daughter did not believe in anything spiritual, but
Mm-hmm.
believed completely in the medical community, right? And so she was always going through, she had 3 sections of sessions she had to go through. So the first one she had completed, and the second one she was in the middle of it, right? And so it was so she was getting sick every month. She was missing school. When she was feeling good and had energy, she'd go to school, and then she would, catch something else, and she'd come back home and she'd fight all this stuff that she was going on. And so when I was working on her, so the last section that they wanted for treatments they wanted to do on her, they told her it was going to take 17 to 21 months before they'll finish it and it's complete, right? And so I was working on her for I think it was literally 6 weeks. I worked on her every week.
Mm.
And at the end of the 6 weeks, that's when her next session started. And so the doctor did testing on her, and they're just like, we can have you done in like 6 to 8 months. And we're just like, instead of like 18, 17 months to 21, it's like, oh my gosh, that's like amazing. Like that's amazing. And she was like, I truly put faith in it, and I believe that spirit would heal her. And it's like it was perfectly timed. Like it was only 6 months, and after then, like I've gotten updates from her all the time. She's like healthy. You would
Mm-hmm.
never know she was ever had leukemia, and she was just like, it was amazing, right? And I'm like, well, that's the
Wow.
power of believing, and then that was just the power of
Mm-hmm.
asking, and that's all I was doing. I was just asking to help heal her, right? So yeah, so that's
Mm-hmm.
my favorite. That's my favorite story of all, right? And so cancer, interesting.
Yeah.
It's not a program that we can plan. It's something. If we fear it, we create it. And so it's not something
Mm-hmm.
that the soul can control. And so we have lots of exit points. So we usually have 3 to 5 exit points. We pick any of those ones that we want, and then we can plan them into our life at certain different times. Um, and so, like, if you are a cancer patient and you don't have an exit point coming up for at least 12 years, you're probably going to have cancer for the next 12 years of your life, or you'll go into remission, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting how that's like a huge factor in all that, right? So the first thing I did is like, well, does she have any exit points coming up? Like nothing, right? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
great. She has nothing. So, you can work on a client who has positive energy. And I mean, grandma was great at putting that in her, right? And so
Right.
like, especially with cancer, like you can't say I'm going to be cancer free because your
Mm-hmm.
subconscious doesn't understand what free means. So what you're telling your subconscious mind is like, I want cancer, I want cancer. Same with debt.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be debt free. Well, you can't say free because your soul doesn't recognize what free means, right?
Mm. Thank you, Rhonda. There have been a lot of disruptions in this interview today. There seems
Yeah,
like, I
thank you
don't
very
know.
much for being patient.
And I think Mercury retrograde is also around the corner. So yeah, all the electronics going a little haywire. And then yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Rhonda, for thank you for your patience as well. And for all the information that you shared with us today. And if people want to get in touch with you, Rhonda, how do they reach you?
I do Halo energy clearings, and then you can find me on Facebook. You just type in Halo,
Mm-hmm.
or my webpage is it's a soul thing
Mm-hmm.
.net, and then on that, or and then all those have different links to sending me emails or asking me questions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Perfect. And I'm going to put all of that under in the show notes as well. So,
Okay,
all right.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rhonda. And thank you, everyone. We'll be back with the next episode soon. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye bye.